Shut up and sit down.
The time trial. One man against the elements and the clock, but what exactly is a time trialist and what makes a good one?
Let's go! Let's go! 1, 2, 3, 4. I like to ride my bike all around. I like to ride my bike all over town.
You are listening to the Dialed Podcast with Matt Legrand, Evan Price, Lance Hepler, and Jake Von During. Enjoy this special episode that is guaranteed to help you beat everyone at your next time trial. Guaranteed. I am everyone and I approve of this message.
Now, to anyone out there who wants to go fast, anybody,
I want to go fast.
hey, get him a suit.
But sometimes it squeaks. I like to ride my bike. I need WD-40.
Hi, and welcome to the Dial Podcast. I'm Jake Von During, and today we have a special episode for you. It's going to be a bonus episode from the Dial Podcast. Good times.
Oh boy.
Secret
bonus episode.
Bonus.
You have unlocked the secret bonus episode.
Is there like a code for this or something like that?
Up, down, left, right,
Yes.
yes.
All right, and I am here with Lance Hepler.
Lance Romance in studio.
Ooh, in studio.
Studio.
Yeah, Evan Price.
How is it going?
That's disturbing. That noise. That's a disturbing
This
sound.
is the secret one. We got to be like super
It's getting
secret.
creepier.
Let's have a competition
it's
for
getting
an
worse.
intro for Evan. Let's have a competition.
Oh, I
Although
like that actually. I'm not creative. I need
Yeah.
somebody to come up with a good one for me.
It's done deal. All right.
Yeah.
If you post something up on our Facebook page,
I have to say it next time.
and you win, I will send you a T-shirt.
It's going to be something about seals or sea
I
lions.
have to
Sea
say-
lions. Sorry.
Seals are fine. It's sea lions,
lions.
Matt.
My bad.
Thank you.
My bad.
Okay.
All right. Last but not least, Matt Legrand.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? How are you guys doing?
I'm great.
Doing pretty good. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks for asking. That's nice of you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Our bonus episode this week, we're going to talk about time trialing and some strategies to get you through a time trial, whether it be your first one or if you're coming out and just getting ready to start the season and you got a time trial on the calendar, like many people sitting here at the table.
Like one this Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, coming up this Sunday. We have the Jack Frost time trial locally here in the Portland area, and that will be the unofficial start to our season. And we are going to go out there and do a time trial. And we had a listener chime in and ask, can we talk about time trialing and talk about some strategies that we can help them employ during their time trial to have a good time? So let's run through that, boys. Anybody want to get started?
Tons of questions for you guys, tons of, ideas on the topic for sure. Do you guys think time trialing is like legit cycling racing, or how do you guys feel about like the subject matter as a whole? Does it feel like real cycling?
If it's a stage in the Tour de France, it's real cycling in my
Okay.
opinion.
Hey,
I
there you go.
agree.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is
Yes.
real. It is just you against the clock.
Fabian Cancellara would like to say that this is real. So
Yeah, and if you don't think it is, go out and try one. When you're done, tell me how you feel.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking like there are traditional cyclists that believe that the classics are the only real races, the cobbled, and so I can see where they're being, like time trials. Nah, that's not real.
going to the.
Sure.
Oh God, I'm going to drop so many little historian things in cycling. Eddie Merckx said the hardest thing he ever did on a bike was the hour record.
And Eddie Merckx
Yeah.
decides,
Which was a time trial.
He has decided what is cool.
Oh, yeah.
And it is put in, and that is written in stone.
He is the spirit of the Velomonte and the
Absolutely.
Belgian rules of cycling. So yeah,
Okay, fair
if he
enough.
says it, it's real.
That's right.
And plus, who's going to argue with somebody who had the nickname the Cannibal?
The cannibal.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That's a good question, Matt. I personally think it's a race.
Legit.
Yeah, it's totally legit. It would be like me going to you and saying, "Do you think a sprint triathlon is a race?" Or
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So you go out there and you're competing against other people who are all competing against the clock.
Yep.
It's a race. So, how about you, Lance?
I completely agree. I happen to be terrible at time trialing.
I was
so-
expecting Lance to be like, no, time trialing is not a race. It's not real and should never count.
No, I do think it is straight up. It is.
He's like,
it's just you against the clock and your own brain and how good your equipment is and how
like,
strong your legs are.
There's nobody out here to lance. I got to lance myself.
That's right.
That's the other thing is like because equipment comes in and makes such a strong role, it almost feels a little cheap. you know, like you're like, oh, this person's better than me because they have a disc wheel. And you're like, well, that's lame. Like that doesn't feel like sport to me.
Time trials are like the breeding ground for excuses. Oh, it's like,
but you wouldn't show up to a road bike race on a mountain bike and
this is true. Yeah.
competitive.
Sure. I agree with that. I'm just thinking of the purity of the sport and the event. And it feels like if you can buy speed, it doesn't feel as legitimate, right? Like when you're running a race, you show up in, you know, bike trainers and someone else, or running trainers or whatever, and someone else has got like spikes on or whatever. There's like that slight bit there. Not really. Like
Not
there's
to
just
the same level.
There's
Yeah.
nothing like being like, oh, I can put a disc on it and I can go 5 minutes faster. Right. You know, like that's
A
just
disc, a speed suit, an aero helmet. They make major differences.
Aerodynamic frames, aero bars, the
making
whole
yourself
shoot
more
match.
aerodynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, as we start to talk about strategy and things like that, we should roll back around to aerodynamics because that is part of the strategy to racing time trials.
Yeah.
But real quick, let's talk about the difference between a traditional time trial and then there's a whole other category which is growing in popularity. And as a matter of fact, at the Jack Frost time trial, it's going to be the biggest category, the most attended, the Eddy class, which is short for Evan. I'll let you do this.
Eddy Merckx, the greatest cyclist of all time. So yeah, it's based off of. I really like it because time trials, I think, intimidate people if they don't have a time trial bike. Like you're going to go and just get destroyed by people who's sitting in the aero position. It is cool that the Eddy division is becoming more and more popular, where people just. I mean, it's the simplest race to describe. You bring your road bike and you ride whatever the distance is as hard as you can.
And they have rules on that, like the wheels can't be more than 30,
40
millimeters deep.
40 millimeters deep.
Yep.
What about helmet? Do they have a rule on
No
helmet?
aero helmets.
No aero. Yeah.
And
Which is getting a very blurred
That is a
line
blurred
because
line.
some of these road helmets now are pretty darn close to being aero helmets.
Well, just in the same breath, you've got your traditional road bike and you've got your aero road bike, and there's a difference there. And you can use those aero road bikes.
Absolutely.
You just can't use a time trial bike in these Eddy class divisions. So
no slap on aero bars either.
no slap on aero bars.
So
no speed suit.
Bambino helmet would be. This is one that who makes
Cask.
the Bambino? Cask makes that one.
Yeah.
That would be illegal, right?
Correct.
And what about? I mean, because that's not that far off from something like the Giro. Giro has like a couple of aerodynamic helmets.
Giro's got one that's really close.
I know.
Yeah, we've got Cask
does too,
Yeah,
yeah.
Cask supports our team, and a lot of the people doing the actual time trial, not in the Eddy class, will be wearing the Bambino helmet. But many of the people on our team wear the Cask Protone helmet, which is an aerodynamic road helmet,
Right.
and it's pretty slippery. I mean, it's a pretty aero helmet, which is completely legal. So,
What helmet will you wear? Because you'll do Eddy, right?
yeah, I'll be wearing the Protone helmet.
Protone helmet. Okay.
Yep.
I got a super dumb question. If we really wanted to go like pure Eddy class, like if we really in the spirit of cycling,
totally,
would you
that'd
be
be awesome.
allowed to not wear a helmet?
No,
Not
anymore.
an Obra, not there's
no sanctioning body's going to
No
let you go out there and
sanctioning,
race
yeah.
a bike without a helmet on. So.
I'm sure the insurance would be pretty expensive.
As a matter
for
of
that.
fact, for OBRA, where we're at the Oregon Bicycle Racing Association, you can't even like in the pits ride your bicycle around
makes
without
sense.
your helmet off.
Yeah.
You'll get screamed at by an
Yeah.
official. Like, get off your bike and walk it.
I 100% assumed that, but I was wondering if just for the Eddy division, they're like, you're allowed to not wear a helmet now.
That's actually the same thing in triathlon. Is you can
Yeah.
get disqualified from
Oh,
the
yeah.
race
Yeah, you're
for
done
biking
for-
around before the race without a helmet on.
Yeah, there you go.
So just so you guys know, put that helmet
Your
on.
helmet can't even be off until you're at the bike rack
Well,
in a
I'm saying
triathlon.
like saying like if you're biking around before the race, you can
Yep.
get in trouble. So
All right. So before I interrupted you and talked about the difference between Eddy and then your traditional time trial with all of the aerodynamic advantages, you had something that you were starting to touch on.
Totally lost it.
Totally
It's gone.
lost it.
It's gone.
I was probably talking about like
We're too far into
starting
the rabbit hole.
At some point, we'll get into strategies and aerodynamics and
Yeah,
stuff like
for
that.
sure.
But I think that's what I was.
That's what you're
referring
talking
to.
about.
Yep.
So traditionally in time trials, at least for your flat variety that you have, they're mostly flat. You've got a 20K, 20 kilometers, which is 12.4 miles, and you've got a 40K, which is twice that, and it's going to be 24.8 miles. The Jack Frost time trial that we will all be participating in will be a 20K competition. So
God.
you're going to be 30 minutes plus or minus however many minutes you're.
Some of us might be 30 to 40, 50 minutes. We'll be out there.
the wind, the wind on this course will obviously play a massive
You know
factor.
what's interesting is so for those of you guys that don't know this, we actually just did a group ride out there. And it was not windy when we were out there riding hard.
I think we were there at the right time of day.
And then as soon as we started riding home, it was like, it was
so windy.
blow your socks off. It was like,
Yeah,
it
picked
was
up for sure.
absolutely putting me into a standstill. It was ridiculous. It was so windy on the way home.
it was.
So time of day is going to make a difference for
Correct.
sure. And the way they run those races is they send someone off basically every 30 seconds or so.
Correct.
And it's a big group. And so, there will be people kind of all day kind of going through the race.
I think they'll get started. What is it, like 9 or 9:30 in the morning?
I think so.
Be about the first rider to
Yeah.
go out, and then they'll send out somebody like Matt said. Every 30 seconds, they will from time to time press pause just to check and make sure that everything's good and kosher with the course, if they have any kind of mishaps or whatnot. But they pretty much will stay tried and true through the entire race until it's done. And then the last ones will probably leave somewhere around 11:30, 12 o'clock. And like I said, take about 30-ish minutes to finish. If you're finishing sub 30, you're flying. If you're a little bit over 30, you're still doing pretty good. If you're north of, like, say, 40, 45 minutes, you're kind of
a long day.
Moving along. It's a long day. Yeah. So
You're getting your money's worth at that point.
so, but they do have other types of time trials. More notably in triathlon, you guys are pretty much doing a time trial when you're on the bike component. They also have uphill time trials, and that's where you'll pretty much.
I would
love
to do that.
really love to see. I had just seen a Facebook post about this where they're talking about doing a American National Hill Climb like series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That Phil Guyman thing. I think
Yeah,
just putting it on.
and they're talking about Mount Baker. That'd
That could be cool. Yeah.
That'd be really, really cool.
Which is up north of
It's like Seattle.
Seattle,
Seattle,
Billingham area, isn't it?
I don't know. I
think
thought it
it's-
was
is that
east
far
of
north?
Seattle.
Sure.
I'm not sure.
up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so let's talk about some of our strategies for this. So for me, I'll kick this off. I think it's really important and not absolutely necessary, but it's really important to have a power meter and kind of have a good idea of what your functional threshold power is, or FTP. And that's basically the number of watts that you can hold for a sustained period of time. For FTP, a lot of people are doing a test in a 20-minute period, and that's giving us an idea of what our theoretical 1 hour ability is to hold said watts are. Having a good understanding of that number is going to give you an advantage, because you can go out, and what always happens in this kind of a race is people will hear the words go and they just drop the power down and they just drop the hammer. They're flying and they're going way too hard for the first minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then they'll settle into their routine, and then they'll get about halfway to 3/4 of the way through and like, oh my gosh, my numbers are just they're falling way down, or I'm feeling
drop.
exactly.
Yep.
And then you have what's called a positive split, and we don't want to have a positive split. Matt, you want to tell us what a negative split is?
So negative split is, it's same in each sport, like running or biking or even swimming. So it's when you're actually going to go faster on the second half of the particular event.
Exactly. So we don't want to get into a situation where we peter out and we slow down as the race starts to wrap up and you finish slower, which is going to overall, I think it's going to give you an overall slower period of time, because even though you got a little bit more of a speed advantage in that first minute or 2 minutes, I think the last like 4 or 5 minutes, you're going to have a slower overall number, which is going to cost you time. And you don't want to lose time in this kind of a situation.
Do you know where I think the because I was somebody who for a very long time always positive splitted races. No matter what race it was, I positive split every single race I was in. And I think it comes from like this fear that you're going to get to that finish line and have not emptied yourself.
Yeah.
I think just kind of realizing like, okay, you can still, if you were able to push through the middle section of that race without feeling like you're dying, you can still have a really fast end to that race and really hit it. So, but this is where I'm interested to hear from people at this table who race to power for something like this.
That's the
I
thing,
don't.
is because there's negative splitting
Do
your
you go
time and
yeah.
there's negative splitting your power. And those
Yeah.
are two very different things, because
and also
wind, right?
Wind.
negative splitting kind of how you feel at that moment. I mean, really. So do you guys go straight out at your FTP? Like, do you hit that number and you just try to hold that? Or like how do you approach that? Do you go 10% below and then work your way to it?
I think 10% is way too big of a number. I'll usually try and keep it just under a couple watts, 5, maybe 10 watts underneath, which it's not obviously not going to be for me 10%. And then you've also got to listen to your body, because every single day you get on the bike or do any kind of an event, you're going to feel a little bit different.
Yeah.
And there are some days where you're going to feel like Superman, like AKA Lance,
Yeah.
and you're going to go out there and you're going to drop the hammer and you're going to go a little bit harder. But I still think paying attention to those numbers and staying at or just below, just a touch, so that you can have that negative split. Because when I come back on the return, barring wind, slowing
it's
me
going
down,
to depend.
I'm going to want to push it a little bit more, and I can do that especially with these 20K races, because they're a little bit shorter than that hour long 40K. I can push out a few more watts. So instead of being like 5 watts under, maybe 10 watts under what my FTP is, the second half, I might come out a little bit stronger and start pushing up 5. And then once I get 3/4 of the way through, maybe even go 10 or 15. And then that last mile, I'll try and bury myself, and I'll try and hold something over north of 400 watts as much as I possibly can to finish the race and have that good solid negative split. So,
So maybe this is why I've always been such a terrible time trialist, because I've never done a time trial with a power meter before.
makes a big
It'll
difference.
make
Yeah.
a huge difference.
It's
haven't either.
always been off like perceived exertion, and I certainly struggle from arousal control issues.
That's a very nice way of saying.
Lance is trying to Lance at the beginning of
I
the race.
would
Then
always go out too fast. Always go out too
And
fast.
I probably disagree with Jake to some degree. I think anytime you're accelerating, it's okay to surpass your your normal wattage goals or your average wattage goals. So anytime you're accelerating the bike, i.e. the beginning of the race or coming out of turns, I typically will try to put in a little bit of a dig. Yep, just to get up to speed as fast as possible. Just because if you're up to speed as fast as possible, your average time is going to be slightly faster than if you were to not necessarily just do that slow acceleration and just come into it.
I agree with you on the acceleration
Yeah.
component. I'm just talking about the watts
Absolutely.
that I'm holding. So,
Which is it's interesting, and especially on a course like this, which is flat, like basically like your average power is going to determine your time. Like they are very, very closely related. And so really keeping a very nice even power throughout the race, or slightly negative splitting if you can, that's when you're going to get your best times. So, I mean, you can run out the formulas and things like that, and you can look at it. When you have courses that do have hills in it, there's an advantage to going a little bit harder than, FTP or however or basically your average power for a particular race. But on a flat course, your variance in power should be very, very low.
Yeah.
Like just pretty much.
yeah.
So basically, your average power should look like your normalized power.
Yeah, exactly. Those numbers should be. So and the difference between those, they call, I don't remember, the IF value or whatever that is. And you want that basically to be 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
So there is a little bit of debate on this, because I am not going to be able to cite the article, but there was an article in Bicycling Magazine that was talking about time trial strategy, what we're talking about right now. And I talked about there was a lab study done where they were trying to look at what approach to I think it was like a 20-minute test produced the best power for people.
Yeah.
And I mean, this was a small sample size. I'm sure it was a study with a small sample size, but they looked at actually doing a slight over-under approach to it.
Yeah.
To where it was segments where they were pushing, 2-3% over, dip down 2-3% below their threshold, back and forth and back and forth. And they were finding that and positive splitting actually produced very similar results to what a pure negative, approach did, which I think negative for the longest time is how people approach it. Yeah. But I think that over under to me seemed like an interesting approach.
I don't think this stuff is like figured out completely. I don't think that the four of us have the answers by any means. I mean,
I don't think anybody has answers on it.
I know when you talk about racing the 800 meters in track and field, like typically the fastest times in the world are not negative split at all. They go out very hard for the first lap, and then they hang on for the last lap, and that's it. Like that's the world record, and so I don't subscribe that negative splitting is the only way to do it, but in my opinion, it's the most enjoyable way to do it.
Well, and also, it depends on your physiology. Like, I mean, you got to be an elite athlete to be able to put out, go hammer 450 and then hold on somehow at whatever your FTP is after an effort like that.
I think to speak to that too, you don't want a negative split just for of negative splitting. You don't
Yeah.
want to sabotage the first half of your race just
Yeah.
because you want to be able to say, yeah, I negative split, when you left a bunch of watts on the table, a bunch of output on the table that you could have put into a better time.
Yeah.
So a lot of this does come from repetition. You've got to know your body. You've got to know what you can hold, because there might be a day that I go out that my first half might be my FTP because I'm feeling really good, or there might be some days where I feel like crap, and I know that I will in time come around a little bit, and I maybe have to dial back a little bit. So that just comes from doing these things over and over again, and it comes from knowing your body. And don't sandbag the first half just so you can that's, I don't know if we're actually sandbagging, but don't go out there and do that just so you can say I had a negative split. At least I went out there and I tried hard.
Yeah.
Well, don't leave anything on the table either. So
It's the positive splitter's nightmare right there.
so we've got 4 people sitting at the table here. We're hoping that Lance is going to be able to join us. Lance, will you do this on a time trial bike, or will you jump in the Eddy class?
I don't know.
Lance isn't positive he's going to be racing yet.
Sure I can be there.
Let's say that you can be there. What bike do you show up with?
I'll probably show up in the Eddy class
In the
on
Eddy
my
class.
road bike.
Gotcha.
I do have a time trial bike. It is a little too small for me, so I can't really put out
fun.
very good
Yeah.
power numbers on it, because I feel like I'm cramped on it a little bit.
Gotcha.
But it is slippier. It is faster.
What about the wheels that you have for your road bike, though? Because your wheels are pretty decent as far as sizing goes.
They're compliant.
They're compliant. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
They're under 40 millimeters.
40? Oh.
Yeah.
They're exactly
Okay,
40.
I'm gonna measure. I'm gonna measure,
They're on
and
the
if
belt.
they're even slightly off, flag you. You are out of there.
They're the head 3.4.
Vanquish.
Pardon me. Yeah, head 3.4 Vanquish, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Something like that. So let's talk about some other strategies. We talked about a negative split. We talked about knowing your power numbers. I think for me, another one, you guys kind of already touched on this. You got to know the weather that day. You got to know what to expect,
Yeah.
because if you go out and you're dropping the hammer and you're putting down your power numbers and you get this massive tailwind coming back and you're looking at a giant headwind, we've had this happen before out there at Jack Frost before. That is demoralizing when you're putting down
is.
massive numbers and you're going like
19 miles an hour.
exactly.
Yeah,
So,
in the middle of a time trial.
It kind of plays into that, having that power meter. Like yes, it's demoralizing, but you have to trust the power meter, and the numbers are, if you're putting out what you can put out, that's the right thing to do. If the wind is in your face, and let's say that I want to hold 200 watts for, my average for, Jack Frost time trials. That's not my real numbers, but it's a nice round number. And so you hit it on the way out, the wind's on your back, and you're feeling great because you're moving fast. When that wind hits you in the face and it's kicking you in the pants, like, you just have to look at that number and be like, I'm still hitting my numbers, because you're pushing against the wind. You're just going slower. You're still pushing the same watts, and that should give you a decent time. Again, wind is kind of like hills. If you can technically ride a little bit harder into the wind, you'll end up with an average time that's slightly faster. So that could be a strategy for you guys.
Yeah.
If you do know that the wind is going to come at you a certain direction, technically you should ride into that a little bit harder. Maybe that kind of 3 or 4% range with your FTP that you're looking
be
at those
willing
numbers.
to do what the others won't do, and,
Right.
and know what you're capable of doing, and kind of pour yourself into it so that you can get the best possible time. Let me ask you guys a question though about being on your time trial bike. When the wind does start blowing quite heavily into you, you guys are in your aero bars and you're in your aero position. Is there much else that you can do while you're in that position to make yourself more aerodynamic? Obviously you want to stay off the base bar, but is there anything that you can do? Do you change your head angle? Do you guys bring your back down a little bit? Do you kind of try and tuck things in somewhere?
Yeah.
So we're always careful about the head, and you have to be looking up the road all the time. But you can definitely, there are some little things that you can do. For example, you can like duck your head down, kind of, they would call it like almost like a little bit of like a turtle
You're
look.
hunching,
where your shoulders are shrugged a little bit. That's technically more aerodynamic. You can do the same thing on a road bike, actually, if you're tucked down and
Correct.
you kind of tuck your head down a little bit like that. Typically when I know a big wind gust, you feel that start to come along, I'll usually kind of just automatically kind of cringe into that position. I think all of us kind of do that kind of when we're getting dropped or whatever. We want to tuck in behind someone. We all kind of duck down and kind of crunch our shoulders a little bit. Like, ooh, I'm hiding behind someone. Yeah. So and those definitely work. You can see those in wind tunnels. Like you do the shoulder shrug. I mean, it's kind of one of those things. And they'll say it's crazy. Like you can get like 10 watts
Wow.
from a shoulder shrug and head position. Head
Your
position is
your
huge.
own drag is like 70 to 80% of wind drag. So
Yeah,
you
it's
can either pay $4,000 for more expensive wheels or shrug your shoulders.
It's pretty
there you
amazing.
go.
Yeah.
So on a road bike, it's a little bit different in that you've got multiple positions that you can choose from. You guys are just going to pretty much try and make yourself smaller by shrugging your shoulders, which you can do on the road bike as well.
Yeah.
But,
So here's the question: do you guys go because I have done Eddy class TTs before? Do you go drops or do you actually try to bring your arms in closer and make your frontal area smaller?
There's some interesting strategies
You know
in the Eddy
I,
Works division.
I was always I would bring everything in close because I felt
That's-
very comfortable with my forearms on the base bars.
what I've tried to do as well, I should know these things. I will put my hands up on the hoods or even try and get like the forearms up on the crossbar, the top bar, and tuck the elbows in, keep the head low, and make yourself as small as possible. A good example that I have of this is last year when we did it. Teammate Chris Hannell he's several inches shorter than I am, but this guy is incredibly good at making himself small on the bike. So we took a look at the power numbers. We took a look at, because he and I had a little competition, and let's see here. He went earlier in the day. He went twice. The guy's insane. He rode in his category. Like he got second place on his road bike against everybody else in their time trial equipment. That's how small and aerodynamic the guy is. And then he came back later on in the day and didn't have much of a downtime to kind of
like 10 seconds difference or something. It was really small.
He did his 20K and then he had like 20 or 30 minutes to go out and then do the Eddy class, do the same thing.
Right.
And so he and I had a bet going, and we ended up, it was comparing Eddy to Eddy, but he went out earlier in the day, and I'm not sure if he had a little bit of an advantage because the wind does pick up as the day goes on here, and the Eddy class typically does deal with a little bit more wind. That's neither here nor there. I think he was a couple seconds faster than me if I go back and take a look at the times, and he's on his road bike, but he put out, I want to say it was like 40 or 50 less average watts than I did for the entire race. And that's a testament to aerodynamics. And the guy is incredibly good about making himself small on the bike and super aerodynamic. And he will typically put his forearms on the bar, and he'll get super small, and he can just put out watts and just makes himself fly. So I think that on the road bike, that's probably, based on my assumptions, probably the best position to be in, as opposed to, obviously you don't want to be up on the hoods because you're raising your upper body up, acting as a sail. You can be up on the hoods and you can drop your chest down, but you're still catching air because your arms are a little bit wider out. So if you bring those elbows in, you tuck those elbows in, and you get yourself smaller, I think you're making yourself more aerodynamic.
Like the Sphinx position or whatever, like you're almost like curling your hands up on the bars to get your elbows down and in. They say that's really fast.
So you're putting your hands underneath, like
you kind of basically, like, the whole point of it is bringing your elbows in, but you're coming across the base bars. You're still grabbing like the top hoods.
But your palms are your palms facing up, and you're grabbing the bottom of the bar.
Yeah, you're kind of like, the way I do it, and I'm probably doing it wrong, is basically like my pinkies and stuff like that come underneath the hoods, and it brings your elbows like twisting inward.
Supinating would be the anatomical term. Yes.
Okay. Science. But yeah, because it makes your whole upper body so narrow that they say that that's one of the fastest positions, and that being down in the drops is faster, but it's, because your body position, your back is getting lower and things like that, but your arms are more exposed and your elbows are wider typically in the drops. And so it's weird to kind of like look at fast positions on road bikes, because it's such a different bike, and it's such a different like position wise that your whole body is in.
And this is also where you can look at, you could probably put out more power in the drops than when you're formed, because if you're having that upper body being able to pull, as you push down, there is some to be said for being able to set your core, which is why a lot of skis now on, going back to the TT setups, I think Kona was a good example this year. If people were watching that, there were people who brought their forearms up at, instead of being at a flat angle, so a 0 degree angle, they were bringing their forearms up to some people as high as like a 45 degree angle.
They call it like the praying mantis position.
And that's exactly, if you're listening to this and trying to picture it, it basically looks like a praying mantis. That's kind of the position I've even gotten myself into a little bit more, and I like it a lot more.
It's more comfortable.
Because you're able to really pull up on those bars and set yourself, set your core, really stabilize, and, put power through without having to worry about stabilizing the bike.
I think if I was on the road bike that I would bounce around a little bit. I know that it's 30 minutes. It's not very long, but like, I think I would go into the drops. I think I would, power. I would probably even stand up through the turns and put some watts in when I'm accelerating, things like that. And so I would probably bounce around a little bit on a road bike, probably more than I will.
Change muscle groups. Yeah,
probably more than I will on a TT
fatigue
bike.
Out if you try to, I mean, even on a TT bike, I'll get onto my drops and get up out of the saddle and kind of push. Yeah.
You can constantly be analyzing things as well, because you have your power numbers. You can tweak with your position just a touch. And if you're in a position where there's no wind, all you have to do is look at your average speed or your speed that you're going. And if you all of a sudden put out like a couple tenths more of miles per hour, maybe that's the position you need to be in.
So I'll hold that for a second.
And we all are built a little bit differently, and I think we all kind of go through the wind a little bit differently. I'm probably going to be the biggest sail out of all of us because I have more mass than you guys, so I have to kind of tinker with that as much as I possibly can and get myself into a position that I'm more aerodynamic.
I've got to get real skinny if I'm ever going to have any chance of beating Jake in a time trial. Like, I've got to get like slippery in the wind. I got to be like...
So we talked about wind position and things like that, and like what to do with the wind and things like that. And one of my recommendations for people that are looking for time trial strategies is to know the course.
Yep.
So and knowing the wind is a little bit similar to that, right? Where you're like, okay, I know the wind is going to come from this direction at this particular time of day. Like that helps like, at least mentally, like, okay, I'm going to have to bring it home hard if I'm going against the wind. But knowing the course too, we're all facing this Jack Frost time trial. There are, a couple of turns and things like that where inevitably someone's going to get flagged for crossing the yellow line and they will get disqualified because they always put a judge there. Just knowing the course that you guys are potentially tackling when you're doing a time trial, I think is super valuable.
Oh, yeah.
And having ridden the course, potentially even riding the course hard so you kind of know how you're going to feel in the event. We went hard this past weekend on a ride, which is it's great. I know I still feel like I haven't really given it enough tries to kind of dial in exactly how to race yet. Typically, I'll race once or twice or so, go out and do a workout on the course so that I kind of have a feel a little bit more of like, okay, things are going to start hurting at this point. Like that's okay. Like we've gotten through this before, and then you're at race day and it's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But knowing the course, definitely huge for sure.
Yeah. Being able to come into a turn wide and then cutting it close to that yellow line without crossing it over and keeping your speed up as much as you possibly can so that you're not losing time because you're braking too much, and B, you're not burning extra watts or kilojoules to get yourself back up to speed is a big advantage. So Matt hit the nail on the head.
I feel like knowing where the finish line is too, right? Like,
knowing where the finish line is huge.
It's so funny. So in Jack Frost, you go through these two turns, and I lose speed going through those turns or whatever. You come through the second one, and you just have this last stretch, and I'm gonna guess it's like a minute or two worth of like time left, and for me, that's it. Give the last 100%. Like just go to the well, like try to make yourself throw up on the bike. Like just give it all. Cause there's that last little block and that's it. Like,
cause you hit that right hander coming back away from Vancouver Lake.
Right.
And then, it's a minute or two down.
It's not that much time left, but I feel like that's the time to go.
Yeah.
But Jake, you should take it easy.
Okay.
Because we have a bet,
So take it easy for sure.
Jake and I have a bet on.
I think the finish line's like 6 miles from there, Jake. So just make sure you save something.
So the back pedal on that is that Jake and I are going to be racing. He's going to do the Eddy Merck division, and I'm going to have all the time trial gear known to man, and I'm going to go toe to toe with Jake time for time, and whoever wins,
the winner
buys sparkling water.
The winner buys?
No. Loser buys. Sorry.
Okay,
loser buys.
Whoever, if you win, then you buy.
We'll decide on that. Yeah, day
So
of.
Heads I win, tails you lose. Right.
Right. Yeah. Loser buys sparkling water for the podcast.
Gotcha. Going back to the position, one thing that I want to add, just as like a little side note, whatever position it is that you find that works best for you, make sure that you keep your head up, please. Keep your eyes up. You'd be amazed at how many accidents happen in time trials because people get into that zone of just like, I'm turning myself inside out. I'm holding this number. I'm starting to see a little bit sideways, and they're staring at their stem. They're looking at their front wheel. They're looking just in front of their wheel. And they're not looking ahead of them for other cyclists. They're not looking for indentations or dips or obstacles in the road, or heaven forbid, missing a turn. These things happen, and they happen regularly. So make sure you keep your head up. And that kind of goes back into knowing the course too. Know where the turns are at so that you're not coming into a corner super hot.
One of my worst crashes was in a time trial, actually.
Ouch.
long time ago in Ohio. I was head down, right turn was coming up, hit the brakes way too hard, went straight over, and I barely remember it. Hit, skidded.
Nasty.
That was that was a bad concussion. That was a really bad
You can
concussion.
hit other cyclists too,
Yeah.
where it's just like you're going fast and you're
Put the head down for a
you're
second
thinking
too
like
long,
you're
yeah.
like, hey, flat section, just put your head down and hammer. And you know, in these time trials,
Yeah.
we talk about how it's kind of like an individual sport, and it's just you versus the clock and all this stuff. There are other bikers out on the road. If you're biking, you are either going to get passed or you are going to pass someone inevitably in that race. Like it will happen because there's this event is every 30 seconds. And
I think I overtook about 11 or 12 people last year, and it's not because I was going super fast. It's just that there's all shapes and sizes and ability levels out there. So when you're on the course, know that that's happening.
Yep.
In that same breath, when you're coming up on somebody, or make sure that you announce yourself.
Yes,
be
definitely.
very vocal in advance. Yell,
On your
not
left.
the last second, but on your left, and that should cue the person to get over to their right, closer to the white fog line, so that you can pass them safely. I've had so many people too, and you say on your left, and they go to the left. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. Or don't ride in the middle of the road if you know that you're going to get overtaken. Try and stay a little bit right so that people can come around you. That's another little pro tip for those that are doing this for the first time, or maybe aren't super fast, but they're working on it. And kudos to you for getting out there and racing, but just be courteous of other racers out there.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say it's on the slower and the faster rider to make sure that pass goes safely.
Yeah. I think it was 2 years ago. It might have even been 3 years ago. I don't remember. Whenever it was that I did the Jack Frost time trial, the return trip back in, because it's kind of an out and back with a couple turns in it. The wind was blowing so strongly in our face that there was a poor lady out there that was basically kind of paperboying. She was going left to right, just to get through the wind. And I had to go around her. I'm like, I felt bad for her because she was having a hard time. Kudos to her for being out there, but she was having a hard time just getting through the wind. And I'm having to overtake her without crossing the yellow line. She's taking up pretty much the whole lane. I yelled as loud as I could a couple times, and she finally heard me and pulled straight into the wind, and it slowed her down even more. And I encouraged her as I came around, and then she went back to her paperboying ways. Just be courteous of other riders and be vocal.
This is something. God, Matt, and you know this. We run into this in triathlon all the time. People will get passionate and angry about this conversation, whether you're the person passing or the person getting passed.
Yeah.
And I've always thought just announce yourself, but I will admit there was a race in Ohio. I had this was the first year Ohio 73 for Ironman was there. And for whatever reason, Ironman always likes to send out the 25 to 29-year-old guys like dead last. Yeah. So we jump in the water. We have to swim over these poor people who are panicking in the water. And when I say swim over, I mean literally like I can't see them till they're right there, and I'm like drowning somebody and feel terrible. And then you jump on the bike, and for that was actually my bike PR, and I was going 26.5, 26.6.
Yeah.
And I am flying by these people, and it's you've got
not safe.
No, and it was a huge. There was a ton of people who showed up for it. And you got these sections where it's like I was basically riding right on the line for the entire time. And I can only say on your left so many times before it's like, all right, I can't breathe. I've got to put my head down. I'm whizzing by somebody, and you feel terrible because you're scaring them half to death. But I think it's on the race organizers too to make sure when they're organizing these time trials that you're not causing chaos out on the course too. So yeah.
Well, the guys that put on the race do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And they're
usually
savvy racers.
cycling time trial.
Yeah.
So I'll say cycling
better
time
organized.
trials know how to organize it so much better. A triathlon, whoever puts out the timing for triathlons, we need to have a sit down with them, all of us.
Because they don't want to close the roads for any longer than they need to close the roads. So they're like, let's put as many bikes at the same time on the course.
Yeah.
Which it's just like,
I had a
it's
great
tough.
suggestion
It's a tough
from a friend, and he actually wrote up an email to Ironman, because this does go into time trialing, where he was saying the biggest problems on the roads with the time trial bikes. And he said, what you need to do is you need to take the top 50. So roughly from race predicted times, your top 50 or your top 100 if available. And those guys go off right after the pros do. Those guys and females go off right after the pros do. And then you do your age group roll down from there. And it would only bump it back by 3 minutes tops. There'd be no major change in how long you have to close the roads.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, here's another one I got for you. Make sure you calibrate your power meter before you go out there on the race.
So you're saying power meters are important?
They're pretty important, yes.
You should probably charge your electronic shifting too.
I gotta do that. My power meter's dead right now.
Oh, get that thing calibrated,
Get it
because
powered up.
you don't want to have it
dead, yeah.
go out there and be giving you a low or a high number. Because if it's giving you a high number, obviously you're going to peter out. And if it's giving you a low number, you're leaving time out on the course. So make sure that thing is calibrated and dialed in. And in conjunction with that, know the difference between your power meter on your bike and if you're using a smart trainer, the power numbers that you're getting off of that trainer, because
Different
those are going to be
numbers.
two totally different numbers when you're looking at an indoor training session versus your power meter outside.
And a lot of us
If
have
you're
been
on a
biking
Wahoo
all winter.
if you're on a Wahoo kicker, you're getting lower numbers, so you
Well,
might want to bump up
probably.
your guesstimated FTP.
Yeah. The numbers that Evan and I did on this Wahoo kicker workout, it was the kicker snaps. Those numbers were so far off.
And I'm
It's like
even
50
saying
watts or something.
even on my one at home, because I'll go out and
yeah.
ride. Now, this is what people need to understand too, is that your trainer wattage is naturally quite a bit lower than your outside wattage.
Yeah.
So
just what you're able to produce when you're outside in the wild riding and whatnot. It's going to be, I'm guessing it's going to be,
It's quite a bit
7,
more.
8, 10% more.
Yeah.
I think so.
I would say
Kind of the numbers I've
10%.
seen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just know from numbers I've seen when I've gone out with Dustin, who does, me and him ride
Yeah.
the power together. Yeah, I mean, the numbers I see outside are a lot bigger than the numbers I see
So
indoors.
when I take my Garmin little head unit and I pair it up to my Garmin Vector pedals that I use, and I look at that in comparison to the Wahoo kicker, it's not terribly difficult unless one of them needs to be calibrated. I've seen numbers as far apart as 40 watts, which is pretty huge.
Yeah.
Do calibrations, and I can usually get it within 10 watts, maybe 12 or 15 at worst, with the Garmin reading higher than the Wahoo kicker. So I need to take that into consideration when I ride outside. And then, like we just said, you have to take into consideration when you're actually riding outside, you're going to be putting out
gonna be
more
bigger
numbers.
yeah.
Working in a clinical setting, which is what a lot of people are doing now. It's kind of like riding in a clinic. With your
Yeah.
indoor stuff, it's dramatically different. So.
And also just talking about like race day adrenaline and the effect of like a decent taper.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm taking away from time trialing to a second to talk about running, but don't limit yourself by what you guesstimated that your FTP would be going into the race. If you are riding at a certain wattage and you feel good still, like you're not pushing too hard, don't let that number limit your effort at that moment.
Gotcha.
I mean, this race lasts 30 minutes. Like if you feel good for a 5-minute section, you should probably be pushing pretty hard. Like you should really take advantage of that feeling. Yeah.
So let me ask you guys a question about this. Going into a time trial, what does your morning look like? Let's say you
Yeah.
have a 10 o'clock race. What are you eating? What are you putting into your body? How are you fueling yourself?
Should we say the whole week, like just like a taper week?
You're
Kind of
going-
talk about
are you going
that
for
too?
sushi?
Yeah.
You're going to go for
Oh,
sushi.
yeah,
then?
sushi.
Yeah.
bomb, yeah.
Jake
Oh.
does his sushi. Yeah.
Such a bad idea.
Sushi for breakfast, right, Jake? Leftover sushi for breakfast.
What are you guys eating on the day of like a time trial?
I treat it so I've grown up doing like a lot of running road races and things like that, and so I will treat it just like that, and that's just because it's habit, and habit forming is pretty good when it comes to races.
Yep.
But I'll do simple foods like a bagel, really like toast, like stuff like that, and water. Nothing like milk, no milk product type stuff.
Do you not do banana? You're not a banana
No,
person?
a banana would be fine. That would not sit, that would sit extremely well with me as far as that goes. And then, I kind of try to time things, looking at exactly what time I'll start and just making sure I have enough fuel in me kind of with an hour to go or so.
Yep.
And so I'll watch that a little bit. I probably won't do, I don't know if I'm like, right now, I was talking to Evan about this, like I'm feeling really sensitive to caffeine.
You're not going to do
right now.
caffeine. That was going to be my question for you. Yeah.
I would normally, in a normal situation, I would drink like a kind of a pre-workout drink, like with fully loaded caffeine in it. But I don't know if I'll do that this weekend, just because I've been really sensitive to caffeine lately.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's worth it. So yeah, I'll probably I might have one on hand in case I change my mind or something like that.
Just have a goo with you that got some caffeine in it in case you need, that jump.
We'll see. Yeah. But caffeine works. It's a performance enhancer.
I'll take all of the caffeine.
Yeah.
All of it.
Now, so Lance obviously no caffeine. So
no.
No, I would
do
take caffeine.
So
But it would be, either in a goo or
okay, got it.
yeah, something like that.
Goo,
Yeah, I
okay.
just don't drink coffee, but
Dude.
I take plenty of caffeine.
Do you ever use Noon?
Yeah. I use the Noon.
That's usually
the
my
Noon
go-to
tablets
is Noon.
with caffeine in them.
Yeah,
I
And
like
they've
the
got-
lemon lime ones.
Oh God, they got like.
Yeah.
Have you looked at the milligrams of caffeine they actually have in those? It is intense.
Yeah.
You're taking like a French person's equivalent of an espresso drink. And that's-
How many mils is it?
I need to look at. I think it's 350.
Whoa, really?
I think.
Wow.
I need to let me Google this before.
Okay, because I say a lot of the ones that are higher that I've seen, like in goose and whatnot, are usually right around 100 milligrams. Yeah. Wow. I think a cup of coffee is about that, and if you're going to get like a European coffee, it's probably double that, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it depends too. Like sometimes drip coffee has higher caffeine levels than
it does.
espresso.
It does.
Which is surprising,
when I say a cup of coffee, that's what I'm referring to as a drip cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It has the highest caffeine content out of all of the different drinks. Yeah, interesting. Let's talk about the day of the race. You're there in the morning. You're obviously not going to just roll up to the start line, the start house, and say on your mark, set, go.
Well,
You're
I might. I might.
If you were a wise man, you would spend some time warming up. What are you guys doing for your warm-up routine?
You know what's great about this particular course? A lot of time trial courses, when you get there, you don't have access to the road. You really can't get on the course and warm up much. On this race, there's basically, you kind of actually have to bike to get to the starting line. So, you don't have. Yeah, you do kind of have to bike.
It is.
Over there.
It's almost a mile. It's like 7/10 or 8/10 of a mile to get to the start
from
house.
where you park to the actual starting
the
line.
staging area.
And so I like doing actually biking. A lot of people, almost every time trialist will bring some sort of small bike trainer and basically spin the legs, go through a particular warm up routine. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. I might. It probably would serve me well. I'd probably race better if I did a bit of a normal warm up routine. But I just don't know if I want to haul over. I don't know. It's not that hard to haul over.
It's gonna be so
trainer.
Cold there too in the morning.
There's actually a chance of snow on Saturday and Sunday too.
Yeah, we could be talking about this for nothing. If it does snow, they will cancel or reschedule that race.
Yeah.
But
small chances.
Well, if it's raining, and that cold, I'm not. Yeah, I'll bow out probably. I'm a wimp.
So me personally, I like to spend a good 20-ish, 25 minutes-ish on the trainer, warming up.
Yeah.
And
Can I just borrow your trainer?
Sure. Yeah. I have my little
I
Omnium
nice
trainer by Feedback Sports, which is super portable and super easy to take around. And you got all the adapters for whatever kind of front fork you have or through actually have. So I'll take that. And then I don't like spending all of my time just on that. With this particular one, and usually wherever I go to do a time trial, I'm still going to go out and find a stretch of road that I can go out and just get acclimated to my bike and kind of just do some breathing exercises, trying to get relaxed. Me personally, I always get super amped up prior to a race. And for me to control that's how I do. Just get on my bike and kind of, decompress a little bit, kind of give myself a certain little set amount of time to go out and do that. And I like to do a couple openers outside on the bike, not just on the trainer, but leg openers, just to kind of get that neurological stimulation and kind of open things up so that your body's ready to go out and do the work. I like to do that. And then I'll roll over to the start house, and I'll usually try and get there no more than 2 minutes. Obviously, you don't want to get there within 30 seconds of your start time. You want to be queued up. They'll start calling your name, and you want to make sure that you're in the queue for that. So usually it's that sweet spot's about 2 minutes ahead of the start of the race, and then I'm ready to go. And they'll hold you up, put you in your position, they'll count you down, and then send you on your merry way.
Lance, do you have a warm-up routine for races? Or
I usually spend similar, something about 20-25 minutes on a trainer, because usually the roads aren't open. The same thing. And then I need to make sure I feel good on my bike. Yeah. So I will try to find a stretch of road somewhere where I can lay some watts down just to make sure I feel normal. Yeah, normal.
So Lance, this week, are you going to still be putting out some pretty solid efforts, pretty solid volume going into this race?
My recovery sucks right now.
Yeah.
So I took a little bit of a down. I took a bit of a down week last week, and my numbers haven't improved a whole lot. So I'm probably going to have a bit of another down week this week. I mean, maybe 10 hours instead of 20.
I love how that's Jake's high volume week, and that's Lance's. Talk about polarized training options here when we're talking about how Jake trains versus how Lance trains.
I wish I had that problem. Oh, that's good stuff. How about you, Evan? What's your weekend look like?
So I'm gonna try and hit close to 27 hours of training again this week. So here's the thing is I'm gonna ride to the time trial, and I'm actually gonna do probably a 20-minute effort to the time trial because
save it for afterwards.
Well, my goal is to get 3 hard around half-hour efforts in that day, jump off and run a tempo 10K, and then maybe get back on the bike for another kind of just sprint where
there's
30 minutes of sprint.
There's a nice little trail out there to run. It's
Yeah.
not 10K it's in distance, but we could,
Yeah.
you know, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like, ooh,
Yeah,
it'd be nice
if
to
you
run
if you
over
want
there.
to jump off with me, I will absolutely run with you.
If you're doing a 10K tempo, we won't be running together, but we could be running at the same time as each other.
It'll be tempo. I have no idea what that pace is going to look like.
That's
but
okay.
You
Yeah, I
have
mean,
to haul
but
some shoes with you then.
This is going to be the problem for me. Is I'm doing well. I think
Oh.
I think I may there are some friends driving, so I think I may
Okay.
just throw them in there. But you know, for me, the day before, I've got to get a long ride in, and I've got to do a hard track workout. Like I got to do mile repeats that day. So
The day before.
I'm just building excuses right now. All this is, but
You got to look at the big picture.
Here's the thing though, is that usually if I train hard into a race, I actually race fine there. Usually it's when I try to mess around with my usual taper stuff is when, you know, it's get too antsy before, I guess.
Anybody have any goal times for the race this weekend?
Okay,
Depends on
well,
the
I
wind.
glanced at a split from when we went through, and that was with teammates and people and things like that. And I think I was like 31:30 or something like that. I think. I mean, it's hard to know because I definitely was sucking wheel here and there during that little roll through. So, I mean, obviously
part of that too was the turnaround. Everybody kind of came off the gas and kind of leisurely went through that, and then we had a slow roll up and didn't really get back up to
Yeah.
speed. So you probably lost about a minute or so there.
I don't know about that. I mean, it's hard to say. Like, you have a group of people that, I mean, when I was on your guys' wheel, it definitely helped a lot. I mean, huge, right?
Sure.
I mean, you guys pulled through, and I just was there. I was happy to get on that, set of wheels for just, I mean, it wasn't that long, but it was a couple minutes of free speed.
Sure.
And so, I don't know. I don't know what my time was last year. Maybe it was around 30:30. I'd have to go back and look and see what it was. But kind of in that kind of range. If I could break 30 minutes, I'd be super pumped.
My guess is Matt's going under 30.
I don't think
That
so.
That
I
big
doubt
bike
it.
week you did not have that big bike week going into this race last year.
I had a really horrible week this past week, and it'll depend on the weather conditions, and it'll depend on a whole bunch of other stuff. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would love to break 30 because it's 30. I mean, there's a 30-minute barrier. It's there. I would love to break it. But if I go out there and I do 31:30, then I'm not going to stress too much. It's the Jack Frost time trial. It doesn't matter.
No.
I
It's
would
beginning
love,
of March.
Yeah. And the other thing is,
this is like the prologue in the Tour de France. You're just seeing where your legs are at right now. That's it.
The other thing that I think would be really cool is last year I was able to score points for the team, which is very difficult for me to do. And so if I could do anything like that, even if it's like a quarter of a point, I don't know, they don't award quarters of points, but still anything like that would be cool.
I'll
Yeah,
give you
so
a quarter of a point, Matt.
The way the points work is you have to finish in the top 15 of your category.
Yeah.
And 15th place is going to get 1 point. All the way up to first place is going to get 15 points.
Right.
So
last year I got 15 points.
Yeah, you won your category.
Won my category. There's no one else in it. Well, there was, but still.
How about you, Evan?
So I mean, looking back at when I really only know my 40K potential. I really have not done like a hard 20K. And I mean, in a triathlon at nationals this last year, I went 56 low.
Yeah.
So that put me at almost 27, I think, for the average.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, here's the bottom line. I have no idea what my legs are going to feel like on Sunday, and I'm not going to be on race wheels. I'll probably bring my TT bike. I'll be on my TT bike.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'd definitely be under 30. I would hope.
Do we
Who
need to have
knows?
another little side bet between you and Matt?
Probably.
Yeah, we should probably have tons of bets.
Well, how about to make it completely fair? I will trash my legs Saturday, and then we'll go at it toe to toe.
I don't expect that to make a difference, but you can trash your legs all day long,
So if you're going like 20, let's say 8:30, 29 range.
Miles
where
an
does
hour?
that?
Is
Yeah,
that
where?
okay?
Well, no. 28, 30, 29 time wise, that puts you at what? 26.5, 27.
Miles an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's about where you're at. I think last year I was at 29:30 and got second place for the third year in a row.
Third year.
I think that's almost exact. So that's a whole minute faster than what I was. We should potentially adjust our bet.
I don't know. Well,
We'll roll with it. We'll stick with it. Let's stick with it.
do I get a couple seconds or some time for my shoulder? And oh gosh.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
We'll stick with it.
You just got to buy faster stuff, Matt.
I don't know.
How about you, Lance? Where do you think you're going to be at?
Oh, I'd be happy to break 40 minutes, I think. I'm feeling like trash, man.
Yeah.
I just got I'm just feeling kind of beat up.
You can
I
just
don't know.
take the gravel bike out, and
It's
then that
true.
way you have a built-in excuse. You're like, well, I'm not nearly as aerodynamic as you.
Yeah.
I mean, if I broke 30 minutes, that would be
sounds right.
great.
That
I
sounds
think
right to
I'm
me.
capable of that.
Yep.
If I'm feeling good. So
Yeah, if Superman can get some
Absolutely.
sun over here and
Yeah.
charge his batteries,
That's
and no
right.
kryptonite's hanging out still, he'll definitely be right there with us. Just to kind of put things into perspective as well, we had the men's Pro 1-2 class. The fastest time was by Colin Gibson, who was 26 minutes and 19 seconds. That's just smoking fast, so fast, and then average speed of 28.33 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So, but he's on a TT bike, so there's obviously going to be a difference between a TT bike and a road bike for myself with Lance.
Probably disked out
yeah.
too, and there's a big difference between riding no disc and disc.
What do you
too.
think the average mile per hour difference is?
In a disc, a minute.
I think
Yeah.
Over 20K?
Yeah, a disc is huge.
Disc is
So how about like
Disc is big. It's two. I've heard that it is 2 minutes over a 40K, which
Wow.
just chop that
And
down.
it depends on what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing
Yeah.
it to regular road,
Type of course, too,
road
is
wheels,
big.
and course,
so if we're
yeah,
going to put
for
that
sure.
into miles per hour, how much faster
I
do you
think
think
you're
that
looking
is?
at a couple about 2 is kind of what I've, and it just depends too, right? Like
There's
it depends
variables,
on
yeah.
I think we talked about this earlier, where it's like 70% of aerodynamics is the actual person on the bike, and so if you can be very sneaky and slippery on the road bike, that's you're not going to win or gain as much aerodynamic advantage by switching to a time trial bike. But
Yeah.
if
If you're a wind sail, you're not gaining that much of an advantage on a time trial bike. Completely agree.
so lots of little factors, but probably 2 miles an hour is just kind of a good pocket number to throw out.
Gotcha. So I would actually venture to say that time trialing is probably like one of the least exciting things to watch in terms of road
yeah,
racing.
it is.
And we just managed to ramble on about it for almost an hour. So that's proof positive that we can talk about anything for far too long.
That's right.
So you guys got anything else to add to this?
No.
No?
No, I think it's
did it.
good.
All right. All good. All right. Well, you guys, all of you, Lance, I hope you can make it. I wish you guys all the best this weekend. Get out there and get it done and get some points for the team. And Matt, you and me, man, toe to toe,
Oh, yeah.
mano y mano.
It's gonna be fun.
There we go. Straight up.
I'm so glad I'm not involved in this.
Wish you luck there. To everybody who's going to go out and do racing this weekend and do some bicycle racing at the Jack Frost Time Trial, if you're doing any kind of racing in your neck of the woods, we wish you the best. Let us know about it. Chime in and let us know what race you did and how you did, and let us know if any of this stuff helped you out. We'd be very curious to see if that was a good little segment for you guys to learn some tips and tricks for time trialing. We'll probably have to do the same thing with respect to some road racing and maybe some triathlon stuff coming up, because there's a lot of that very, very soon. We can actually start to put some race recaps back into our back pedal.
I know. This is going to be the fun part. God, we've had to go so long without race recaps.
Yeah, well, you got your little running race that you
Yeah.
did, but
Yeah.
God, we're starving for that.
We are.
Man, I missed so many of them last year just because I was down for the count. So anyway, we really appreciate it. You guys, thank you for coming back. Everybody that listened, thank you very much. We'll catch you soon on the next one. Bye for now.